Hey, you don't have to straighten anything up for this moment. If the room is a little messy, that's fine. If your thoughts feel unfinished, that's fine too. Life doesn't always come in clean lines. Most days feel like something you almost handled well, almost said the right thing, almost stayed patient, almost felt okay. And that almost can weigh on you, especially at night. A lot of people think they're tired because they work too hard, but often, the deeper tiredness comes from trying to be someone you're not sure you can keep up with, trying to be calm, trying to be competent, trying to be the version of yourself that doesn't need help. Tonight isn't asking for that version of you. You can let yourself be unfinished here. You can let the edges show. Nothing in this space is grading you. Nothing is waiting for you to improve before you rest. You're allowed to arrive as you are, without explanation. There is a sentence in scripture that doesn't try to impress anyone. It doesn't come wrapped in drama. It doesn't raise its voice. It simply tells the truth and waits for you to notice what that truth does to you. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Second letter to the Corinthians, 12-9. At first, it might sound comforting, but if you sit with it long enough, it becomes unsettling in a good way, because it quietly dismantles the idea that you have to be strong in order to be held. Most of us grew up believing the opposite, that strength is what keeps us safe. That weakness needs to be managed, hidden, or outgrown. So when God says power shows up in weakness, it almost sounds backward, but maybe that's the point. Grace doesn't arrive when everything is under control. Grace arrives when control is no longer possible, not because God prefers you helpless, but because that's the moment you finally stop pretending. And pretending takes so much energy. My grace is sufficient. Not will be, not might be, already is. Which means there is nothing you need to add to this moment to qualify for God's presence. No improvement, no fixing, no polishing of the rough edges. Weakness doesn't delay grace. It reveals it. That's the invitation. Not to become something better first, but to stop running from what is already true. God is not drawn to your performance. God is drawn to your honesty. And weakness is often the most honest place you have. Most people don't realize how early perfection sneaks into their lives. It usually starts as something reasonable. Do well in school. Be polite. Try your best. But somewhere along the way, try your best quietly turns into don't mess up, and don't mess up turns into don't let anyone see you struggling. That's when rest becomes difficult, because rest feels unsafe. When you believe your worth depends on how well you hold things together, you replay conversations, you rethink decisions, you imagine better versions of yourself that handled things more calmly, more wisely, more perfectly. And those imagined versions become a quiet standard you never quite reach. Faith doesn't shame you for that. It understands why you do it. But it does offer a different way. Resting in faith means you stop negotiating your value. You stop saying, I'll rest after I fix this. I'll be at peace once I'm better. I'll be okay when I'm stronger. Grace interrupts that cycle. It says, you can rest now, not because everything is resolved, but because you are not required to resolve everything alone. Weakness is not a verdict. It's information. It tells you where you've reached your limit. And limits are not failures. They're invitations. An invitation to let grace do what effort cannot. Most healing doesn't happen because you pushed harder. It happens because you finally stopped pushing, because you let yourself be seen, even if only by God, exactly as you are. And nothing collapsed when you did. Not needing to be perfect is not giving up on growth. It's giving up on shame as a motivator. Shame exhausts. Grace strengthens. Grace gives you room to breathe, room to make mistakes, room to learn without punishing yourself. And that space is where real change begins. Slowly, quietly, without force. Faith, at its deepest level, is trusting that you are still held, even when you are unfinished. Especially when you are unfinished. You don't need to prove you're worthy of rest tonight. You don't need to convince God you're trying hard enough. Grace already knows your name, and it isn't waiting for you to become someone else. There's a kind of tired that comes from trying to keep up appearances, not pretending in a dramatic way, just quietly making sure no one sees how close you are to the edge. It shows up at work. You answer emails that could wait, just so you don't look like the one falling behind. You stay a little later than you need to, not because it's required, but because leaving on time feels like you didn't do enough. And even when you finally shut the laptop, your mind keeps working, rewriting conversations, wondering if that comment sounded wrong, if that pause made you look unsure. Perfection doesn't clock out when you do. It shows up at home too. You want to be patient. You want to be present. You want to say the right thing. And when you don't, when you snap, or withdraw, or just go quiet, you carry that with you. You replay it later, thinking, I should have handled that better. I should be more calm than this. I shouldn't be like this by now. Those thoughts feel responsible, like you're holding yourself accountable. But most of the time, they're just heavy. Faith doesn't ask you to lower your standards for love or kindness. It asks you to stop confusing perfection with faithfulness. Faithfulness is showing up again tomorrow, still trying, still caring. Perfection demands that you never falter. Grace understands that faltering is part of being human. There's something deeply American about believing you have to earn your rest. That rest is something you deserve only after you've proven yourself useful enough. But grace cuts through that idea quietly. Grace says rest is not payment, it's provision. You don't rest because you finished everything. You rest because you reached your limit. And limits are not shameful, they're honest. They tell the truth about your body, your emotions, your capacity. God is not offended by those limits. God built them into you. Not needing to be perfect means you stop fighting the truth of who you are today, not who you'll be someday, not who you think you're supposed to be, who you are right now, tired, trying, still here. Grace meets you there, not after you calm down, not after you figure it out, not after you promise to do better, right there, and nothing about that moment is wasted. If you've spent years thinking faith meant pushing past yourself, tonight it can mean the opposite. It can mean listening to what your tiredness is saying. It can mean letting weakness be weakness, without turning it into a problem to solve. You don't have to prove your strength tonight. You don't have to earn tomorrow by exhausting yourself today. Grace doesn't need you perfect to stay with you. It only asks that you stop running from the truth of where you are. And right now, this is where you are, and that is enough. There is nothing you need to activate right now. You don't need to feel peaceful. You don't need to feel close to God. Presence isn't something you manufacture. It's something you notice after you stop striving. God isn't waiting for your attention to show up. God is already here, closer than your thoughts, closer than your self-criticism. Weakness doesn't make this presence uncomfortable. It makes it intimate. You don't need to say anything right. You don't need to promise anything. Just stay where you are. Grace isn't impatient. I want to talk to you for a moment, not as someone giving advice, but as someone sitting close enough to notice when you're tired. Because some kinds of tired don't come from doing too much. They come from asking too much of yourself, from waking up every day with the quiet expectation that you should be better by now, calmer, more patient, more confident, more together. That expectation doesn't shout, it just stays, and over time, it wears you down. If that sounds familiar, there's nothing wrong with you. It just means you've been trying very hard for a long time. You don't need to apologize for that. There are people who were taught very early that being loved meant being easy to deal with, being strong, being reliable, not needing too much. So even now, As an adult, rest can feel undeserved, like something you have to justify. But grace doesn't ask you to justify yourself. Grace doesn't lean back and wait to be impressed. It leans in. It stays when you're quiet. It stays when you're unsure. It stays when you don't have the energy to explain yourself anymore. If you're holding disappointment about who you are right now, you don't have to push it away. You don't have to solve it. Just notice that even this part of you, the unsure part, the tired part, the part that wonders if you'll ever feel enough, even this part is not outside of care. Nothing about you tonight needs fixing before it can be loved. You don't need to be more disciplined to deserve peace. You don't need to be more faithful to deserve rest. You don't need to be less messy to be welcome. Grace doesn't wait for conditions to change. It meets you in the condition you're already in. And maybe the most comforting thing to hear tonight is this: you are not behind, not spiritually, not emotionally, not in your life. You are exactly where a human being would be, after carrying what you've carried, and you don't have to rush your way out of that. If your heart feels heavy, you don't need to explain why. If you feel tender in places you don't fully understand, that's okay. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that never struggles. You're allowed to be real here, and you're allowed to rest without becoming someone else first. Nothing about you is disqualifying this moment. Nothing about you is too much for grace. Stay with that for a breath or two, not to analyze it, just to let it be true. You don't need to carry anything out of this moment with you. Not the words, not the thoughts, not even the feelings. They don't need to be held. They can fade on their own. Tonight isn't asking you to remember something important. It isn't asking you to change anything before morning comes. It's just letting you rest where you are. There's a quiet kindness in that. So if your mind drifts, let it drift. If your body settles, let it settle. If sleep comes slowly, that's fine. If it comes quickly, that's fine too. Nothing is being measured here. You're not missing anything by letting go. The parts of you that feel unfinished don't need attention right now. They don't need fixing in the dark. They don't need answers before the night moves on. They can wait, and they will still be held when tomorrow comes. You don't have to stay alert for grace to remain with you. You don't have to stay aware. You don't have to stay strong. Grace doesn't leave when you grow quiet. It doesn't require effort to keep it close. It doesn't depend on how well you understood anything tonight. It stays because that's what grace does. So you can loosen your grip now, on the day, on yourself, on the idea that you need to be more than you are in this moment. You've done enough just by being here. Let the night keep going in its own way. Let the hours pass without you managing them. There's nothing you need to prepare for right now. Nothing you need to rehearse. Nothing you need to promise yourself you'll do better tomorrow. Tomorrow will come when it comes, and you'll meet it when you do. For now, this is enough. You are allowed to rest without becoming someone else. You are allowed to be held without being perfect. The quiet doesn't need your attention anymore. It knows what to do. Just stay where you are, breathing, existing, and let the night continue.